Hi everyone, it's Allie. Today, I would like to guide you through how we were able to modify the linear gauge for use in the Resource Hour Allocation Overview section of the Project Management Dashboard. In this section, we are looking to represent each resource's weekly allocation of hours by showing the breakdown of planned, worked, free, and overage times as ranges of the gauge. Typically, the linear gauge is used with a primary value compared against a scale with one or more comparative values, or ranges, such as visualizing wind strength or computer memory's pressure. For our dashboard, we only needed the ranges, so we had to strip away the non-essentials, such as the needle, tick marks, and scale labels, while modifying other properties such as the background, border, and ranges. So let's dive in and see how we can modify the linear gauge to achieve the desired result. This tutorial is going to assume you already have the Ignite UI CSS and JavaScript dependencies included on your main page, as well as a container that the linear gauge control can latch onto. Now that you have the base dependencies, let's move on and take a quick look at the code. Let's start by adding code to initialize the linear gauge, and that includes a lot of your base values, such as height, width, value, minimum value, and maximum value. We'll first set the minimum and maximum values to 0 and 40 respectively to represent the work week. Next, we'll add 15 to the value to represent worked hours. Finally, we'll add some ranges to represent the hour allocation categories. Running the code, you should now see the linear gauge as it normally would appear in other samples. The needle is currently set to worked hours, plus all of the color ranges represent the hour allocation categories. Now we're ready to clean this up a bit and start removing the non-essential items from the linear gauge. We can first remove the needle from the gauge, but to do this we'll need to modify a couple of properties. The first property we need to modify is the needle breadth. By setting needle breadth to 0, we force the needle width to be collapsed. However, if you were to run the code, you'll still see a sliver of color. So we'll need to update and modify needle inner extent, needle interpoint extent, and needle outer extent to 0 to fully hide the needle from the gauge. By running the code now, you'll see that the needle is completely removed from the gauge. All we have to hide now are the tick marks and the labels. Let's start with the labels. To hide the labels, you'll need to set label extent to 1.5 or anything above 1. If you provided transition duration in your sample, please remember to set font brush to transparent. This way it will hide the labels during an animation. By running the code, you'll see that the labels are now hidden from the gauge. All that's left to remove are the tick marks. Hiding the labels was simple enough. But what about the tick marks? In order to hide the gauge's tick marks, we need to set the tick's post initial property to something equal to or greater than the maximum value. Here we'll set it to 40. Now, if we were to run the code again, we can see the final display of the gauge without the needle, labels, and tick marks. With this linear gauge display, we utilize the ranges to represent the data hour allocation. Thanks for joining me for this video on using the Ignite UI linear gauge within the Project Management Dashboard. If you haven't done so already, please feel free to download the sample code for the dashboard at the link below and explore the code for yourself. See you next time.